Klaviyo's MCP Server. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. What the F is that exactly? Now, it can be quite intimidating at first when you think about the technical term around it, or just the sound of it, Model Context Protocol. The average person will jump out of their seat all scared and worried, but it's actually a very simple concept to understand. And I'm going to unpack it with a pizza store analogy. Who doesn't love pizza? Now, imagine this. Okay, you are a pizza shop owner and you've got a customer called Jim. Let's call him Jim. Now, Jim is extremely hungry. He wants his pizza. Okay. He wants a Coke and he wants a salad for his wife because he's not going to enjoy the salad. He wants his pepperoni pizza. So he comes to your pizza store and he places an order for a pizza. Okay. So imagine this. Him ordering a pizza is an API call. So the API call will then basically feed that back to the kitchen. Okay. And the kitchen will start preparing the pepperoni pizza so that we can deliver it to Jim. So you can see here it's an API call. The person at the counter calls the kitchen, places an order, and the pizza gets delivered to the counter. Jim also wants a Coke. Okay, so the person at the counter is going to ring the kitchen, and the kitchen is going to place an order for the Coke, and they're going to bring the Coke to Jim, back to Jim. Okay, Jim's going to have his Coke. Jim also wants a salad for his wife. Okay, the person at the ordering counter lets the kitchen know that Jim also wants a salad, and then basically feed it back to Jim, or the counter to hand it over to Jim. The problem with this is that it's clunky, it's cumbersome. There's a lot of API calls back and forth for every single request that needs to happen. And the biggest challenge here is that it isn't fast, and it's not necessarily the best integration to LLM models, ChatGPT, Claude, and so on. Because a lot of things can break here, and it's very slow and it's not intuitive. Now, let me remove this quickly for a second. MCP servers, Model Context Protocols, have been developed as the bridge, the intelligence center, the system that unifies all of this. So imagine this instance here, okay? I'm going to reverse the flow of the request or the data now. So an MCP server is the middle layer, essentially. You can call it middle layer, okay? So imagine you plug all your stuff into MCP. Okay, let's do it like this. So Jim comes in, places an order for pizza and for salad and for Cokes, and it then gets synced back to the MCP server and it gets fed back to the counter. Now imagine Jim comes back tomorrow and he wants to place an order again. The MCP server already holds some of that data, or it can basically sync up with that data in a unified way. So Jim is going to enter his phone number at the counter, and the MCP server is pretty much going to pick up that it's Jim, and Jim places a certain order for pizza, for Coke, for something else, and so on. It can then already intuitively say, hey Jim, welcome back. How was the pizza yesterday? Pizza again, or do you want to try something different? It can also be as smart as, let's say for argument's sake, okay, we don't have cucumbers today, okay, so there's no cucumbers available. That data can get pushed into the MCP server to hold that data, okay, and whenever it picks up that it's Jim, and Jim loves a salad because he buys one every seventh day, it can instantly inform Jim when he places an order that, hey, I know you love a salad, but do know that we're out of cucumbers today. But you can still place a server, or you can replace it with something else. Because imagine if we intelligently, this thing knows that a good replacement for cucumber is, I don't know, feta cheese, more salad dressing, French fries in your salad, and it feeds back to the MCP server. There's more intelligence happening in this way that can help the front line to make better decisions, be faster, and so on. And that's the idea of an MCP server, is it plugs into all these different APIs, okay? And then you basically call the MCP server and you can have a conversation with it. It's a much smarter system rather than these one-off API syncing calls that is very, it's very limiting in that sense. Now, Klaviyo is doing the same thing here. Klaviyo is saying, if you want to, essentially, so let me show you this diagram here. So Klaviyo, before MCP, is basically this. So here's your LLM model. Let's say it's ChatGPT, Claude, whatever else, okay? Let's say you've got all these different APIs. You get different Klaviyo APIs, different endpoints for reporting, creating stuff, and whatnot. You plug them in individually, and through the LLM, you can say, hey, can you pull data for X? And it goes in, requests it, pulls it, and serves it. Okay, it's a one-on-one request, and it's very cumbersome, and it doesn't happen in parallel, and so on. Where with an MCP, MCP is essentially the bridge. So what will happen is the APIs plug into the MCP, okay? And the beauty about Klaviyo's MCP is that you set it up once, and then it does a lot of the functioning, the calling, the piping itself. You don't need to connect all these different APIs. You connect one API, and it's a unified API system. So when I, in the LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, when I call the MCP, it's already filled with all these data sets, intelligence, and so on. So I can essentially just chat to the MCP rather than all these different API calls. And in that way, I can make the LLM smarter. So if I want to, let's say for argument's sake, I want to, what is the best performing subject lines for campaigns the last 30 days, the LLM here will then basically make a bunch of API calls, different API calls to check things because it needs to cross-reference different data points, where with an MCP, essentially everything is already piped into it, so it can already look at its own stuff and decipher the answer, get the clarity around it, and serve it out. Much faster, much quicker, and it's just a seamless way of doing it, LLM friendly. So that's pretty much how it works, is you don't want to run a clunky piece of shop and basically be a very slow ordering system with a slow kitchen back and forth. You want something that's intuitive. When I request it, it can spit out my needs, better replacements, loyalty points, straight off the bat without being a clunky system. That is the Klaviyo's MCP server explained with pizza stores. Now, a question that a lot of people will be asking is, how do you set up or install the Klaviyo MCP server? Now, do know at the time of this video recording, it is still in beta or beta. It depends on where you're based and how you pronounce it. So it only currently supports local machine software or setups. So it can only plug into Cursor. It can only plug, which is a AI code editor. It can only plug into Claude Desktop, which is an LLM model. It can also plug into Visual Studio, which is another code editor. It cannot plug into ChatGPT on the web or Gemini on the web. Not yet. That's probably coming soon. So take that into account, is that it will run and connect on your local machine. So for me, it will run on my local MacBook. Okay, so let's get that straight. The other key thing to also point out is that because we are in a phase of AI being quite dominant, call it vibe coding, whatever you want to call it, please use Grok, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude to help you with the installation of the Klaviyo MCP server. Okay, that's the best way to get step-by-step instructions, debugging errors on it, testing it out, and so on. Because in many instances, you will get edge cases where, let's say for argument's sake, you need to update your package server version, for instance, or your Python is outdated. It's very hard to lock that in with a black and white tutorial, where with an AI chat window or chat, active chat, you can constantly feed it with messages from the logs. Okay, hey, this is what the log is saying, it's getting an error. It will then intuitively instruct you on how you need to solve it. So do know that it's the fastest and quickest way to do it. For some people, it might take 10 minutes. For some people, it might take half an hour. For some people, an hour. obviously depends on your system setup and so on. So here is what you'll see within Grok, for instance. Okay. First step here is, and I've asked it specifically to guide me on how to connect the Klaviyo MPC server on my local machine, and then also connect it to Claude Desktop. And I'm informing it that it's a MacBook, because terminals differ on different operating machines. Okay, I've got a MacBook, so my terminal needs to be set up in a certain way. Now, a terminal is this thing here, if you haven't used it before. Terminal, and this basically, let me just move it over to, give me 1 second. Let me just get the terminal over here. Give me 1 second, yeah. Okay. Pardon that. Let me just get the terminal. I don't know if you're going to see it on your screen, but the terminal is essentially something like this. Okay, and it basically is plugged into my operating system, my MacBook. So it can access files, can access software and the likes. And then I can communicate to the operating system and files and folders and so on. Okay, that is required. Now, step one is, like it says here, is you need to ensure that you have the correct Python package manager. So just follow it. You'll drop some code bits into, or commands in your terminal. So you can see, you can copy it here. You can then verify the installation. Again, your instructions might look a little bit different, but the first and foremost is you're going to fire up your terminal and you're going to add in these different prompts. Okay. You're then also going to proceed to install Claude Desktop. Okay. Because that is the best way to test it. Claude Desktop download. Okay. That is the best way to use it in beta mode, because that is what is currently supported. So you can see there. So download the thing on your device, on your operating system, install it and so on. And then you also need to ensure that you check for no JavaScript and. Okay. So ensure that you follow the instructions here. So firstly, terminal, check that you've got the right Python package manager. Install Claude Desktop. Install Node JavaScript, again via the terminal. And then you also need to create Klaviyo private API keys in the Klaviyo account that you want to sync up to the Klaviyo MCP server / Claude Desktop. Okay, and also you want to give it certain permissions so it can write, read, and so on, because obviously you want the LLM to do certain actions. And then you can proceed to the next step, which is you then need to configure the Klaviyo MCP server for your Claude Desktop setup. So you open up Claude, you go into the desktop settings, you will then see there is a developer tab where you can configure a file. You can follow the instructions as it is here. Copy this code over, plonk it in your configuration file in Claude Desktop. You then need to update the API key with your API key here, save the configuration, and then restart Claude. Once you've restarted Claude, you can actually verify the connection. And when you have a new chat window in Claude, you'll be able to see that it's picking it up. Let me see if I can bring up Claude Desktop. Okay. So I'm going to go chat. Let me go new chat. Okay. So I've got it set up here. So in my chat window, I can see I've got Klaviyo MCP server connected to Claude Desktop here. And these are all the different functions that I can use within Claude Desktop. I can get account details, I can get campaign details, I can create a campaign, I can get lists and so on. So once you've successfully done it, you will see that it's actually enabled within your chat tools. You can see there. If I quickly go back one, and then you can essentially test the Klaviyo MCP server. You can prompt it within, let me see if I can do that. You can actually prompt it within the tool. Let me say, get a list of segments from the Klaviyo account. It's actually, I'm out of free messages here, so it's not gonna, sorry for that. I'm on a free version, yeah. But when you prompt this, you will actually see that it's going to give you a list of Klaviyo segments within your account. But you need to ensure that you've got the Klaviyo MCP connected. And I think that is pretty much that. But again, use Grok to troubleshoot and you'll be fine. So just to summarize that again, use Grok, ask it for step-by-step guidance on how to install the Klaviyo MCP server on your machine. Is it a Macbook? Is it Windows? And do you want to connect it to Claude Desktop? Do you want to connect it to Cursor or Visual Studio? It will then give you all these different steps. You need to ensure that your Python package manager is installed correctly, is the new one, and so on. Install Claude Desktop, install Node, JavaScript, get the Klaviyo private API key, connect everything, configure Claude in the background in the config file with the API key, save it, restart Claude, test it, see if it works, and it's a thing of beauty. You know how we all want to use our favorite LLM model to then basically do stuff within it, prompt it, and then that should basically then action some things within Klaviyo. Guess what? Klaviyo actually made it possible with their new launch of the Klaviyo MCP Server, which is currently in beta. And you can connect it to Claude Desktop. Currently, it's only supporting local LLM models, specifically Claude Desktop, and then you can also plug it into Cursor, Editor, or Visual Studio. But let me show you what it actually looks like in practice. So I've gone through the process of setting it up on my local machine, through the terminal, through the package manager. I've basically created an API key. I've also reconfigured my Claude Desktop version to basically plug directly into the Klaviyo MCP server. So what does that look like in practice? So I'm going to type out a prompt here in the chat bar here, or in the chat modal. And you can see there I have Klaviyo's MCP server configured within my Claude instance. You can see there a couple of things that you can do here. You can get account details, get campaigns, you can create campaigns, and the list goes on. Again, I think this will advance rapidly over the next few weeks and months, so I'm looking forward to that. But let me show you an example of it. I'm going to create an email campaign in Klaviyo to sell our paid course that is geared up for email and SMS marketers. It's a 20% off deal with coupon code SAVE20 for argument's sake. Okay. So what it's going to do is I'm going to hit the submit button. It's then going to talk to the Klaviyo MCP server. It's then basically going to process everything. You can see there a couple of requests that are being processed, a couple of responses, and the LLM is processing this all within its interface. So it's getting the list, it's getting the segments, it's talking straight with Klaviyo itself. Perfect. Now let me create the email campaign for your email and SMS marketing course. You can see here I'm hands off. I purely talked to it like I would do normally. So you can see there, great. I'll now create a compelling email template. It's now proceeding to creating the Klaviyo code. So what it does here is it's essentially creating the campaign as the first instance, and then it's creating the actual template, which is going to be HTML based, and then it will create the content surrounding it. This is all within Claude itself. You can also do this via a tool like N8N, but that's very clunky in terms of workflows. Now, an MCP server makes it a lot more seamless. So now it's creating the template. It's assigning the template to the actual campaign. And now it's giving me a summary of what it has created. It's created this campaign. It's created the ID, or it creates an ID instantly. The status is in draft. There's the details. It's targeting the audience list, subject line, preview text, and then email features and so on. Now I can go, if I click on this, I go straight into Klaviyo. I'm going to open the link. Or I'm actually going to open up, give me 1 second. Let me open up Klaviyo. I'm going to refresh it, and then you will actually see the Klaviyo campaign within the Klaviyo account. This is our account, the Ad Magnet Monster. You can see there, it created this email here, email and SMS marketing course, 20% off limited time. And in there, you can see it has already assigned the audience because it has requested access to the segment, the list of segments. So next, you can see there how we generated the email. Again, as I've said here, it's not a pretty email, but it is freaking impressive. You can see there, master email and SMS marketing, 20% off limited time. It generated the copy, it generated everything here. It generated all these different boxes, CTA buttons, and the likes. And it also added in the subject line, preview text, and I can now make tweaks and I can tinker from here on. So this is an example of the Klaviyo MCP server connected to Claude Desktop. It is absolutely brilliant. You can also ask it questions around performances. So let me go back to Claude Desktop for a second. Let me create a new chat. Let's say for argument's sake, I want to give me a performance summary of campaigns sent in the last 90 days. Okay, I'm going to let that run. It is once again going to be connected via the Klaviyo MCP server. It's going to do its magic. It's going to get the metrics as the first stage in the call. It's then going to get the campaign report. So this is essentially calling it. It's all done via a single API that you connect to the MCP server. It then gets the campaign report. It gets the campaigns to get more context about it, because this is the thing about connecting an MCP server to the LLM. It becomes an extremely intuitive and forward-thinking system, if you want to call it, or agent that looks at both your performance data, your actual campaign, subject lines, your segments, all in one go, rather than you trying to plug in all these different APIs. So again, I'm hands off here. I just asked it a simple question, and you can see here's the performance summary. It's giving me we've sent 8 campaigns in total recipients, the list size there, delivery, the average delivery, the best performance, the worst performance. You can look at the top performing campaign. Why is my email revenue down? Content analysis. It's giving me an analysis on the content, most engaging content types, industry reports, problem solution content, subject line insights, deliverability health, areas for optimization, and recommendations. You can clearly see here, I've purely asked it for questions around our performance on these campaigns. It has gone ahead and it's given me much more than I initially requested. Why? Because an MCP connected to an LLM model enables that. And you can see how it's essentially extracting, calling the data, extracting it, and then basically reasoning through all these different steps in the process to give me what I want. Now, let me give you another example of one, because this is just too cool. So create a profile in Klaviyo. They can receive email. Email address is Vian test MCP at magnetmonster.com. Okay, I'm gonna submit my prompt. I'll create a new profile. Again, it is doing a request to the Klaviyo MCP server. Perfect. I've successfully created a new profile in Klaviyo. The following details. So if I go to Klaviyo, I will be able to see this within Klaviyo, this profile, and it's a thing of beauty. So it's an easy way to add people, suppress people, and the likes. Now, a couple of other use cases for this can include, so again, what is an MCP? It's model context protocol, so that sounds extremely scientific and technical, but it's pretty much a bridge between the LLM or different platforms and Klaviyo, okay, via an API. So the MCP server basically says, give me all these API endpoints, but it only really needs one. It basically pulls everything, then it's got access to everything, and it serves as a bit of a brain. And then whatever you request via Claude or the platform that is compatible with it will basically extract some of the data and the learnings and so on. Rather than setting up all these different API endpoints, it's one middleware brain bridge, as you want to call it. Now, a couple of other use cases here. Let me just quickly navigate to that slide. So yeah, you can create campaigns, like I've said, brilliant for that. You can create flow emails, HTML emails with a simple prompt. You can add profiles to Klaviyo, like I've just shown you. You can suppress profiles. You can see clearly here how I've asked Claude, the LLM model, to please suppress this profile from not receiving emails. It has done that within Claude and it pushed it to Klaviyo. You can also, performance analysis, exactly like I've said here, is list out all the 10 most recent Klaviyo accounts, click-through rate, open rate, and it sends you a good summary of it. You can do segment analysis, so I can get segments, get segment data, and it can also analyze my segments, size, status of them, when they were created, how they're performing with key metrics compared to other segments. You can do content auditing. I can ask it to analyze the subject lines of all my flows and campaigns. You can also set up automated A/B testing for campaigns, HTML emails, and the like. So currently, there are a set of actions that you can take or events that you can take within the MCP server or Claude connected to the MCP server. But I think going forward, it is going to blow up and it's just going to advance every single day. And it's going to come to a point where you don't need to log into Klaviyo. You can do everything through the LLM itself and basically connect that to all other mechanisms and training data and the likes. So that is the Klaviyo MCP server in action. Set it up. It is a brilliant way forward and I cannot wait for this to just become better and better and better. To set it up, you can actually set it up. Do yourself a favor, use something like Grok or Gemini or even ChatGPT or even Claude itself. Ask it for guidance and instructions on how to set up the Klaviyo MCP server on your local machine. Currently, it's only supporting local machines and platforms. It doesn't support cloud versions of ChatGPT, Claude, unfortunately, but that will most likely come in the future.